What if the quarter in your pocket right now is worth thousands? Coins born during a national silver crisis, struck at mints racing toward the future, and celebrating America's birthday are hiding rare errors collectors pay thousands for. Some are still in everyday circulation. Let's find out which ones. First coin. The United States 1965 Washington quarter dollar coin is one of the most quietly revolutionary pieces of American currency ever produced. A coin born during a period of national upheaval, economic anxiety, and sweeping monetary reform that forever altered the landscape of American coinage in ways most people still do not fully understand. For nearly 2 centuries, American quarters had been struck in 90% silver, a tradition so deeply embedded in the fabric of the nation's economy that the very weight of a coin in your hand was a tangible link to the silver mines of the American West and the financial policies of the Founding Fathers. But by 1965, the price of silver had skyrocketed on global markets. Hoarders were pulling coins out of circulation at an alarming rate, and the United States Mint found itself in a crisis that threatened to strip the country of its circulating coinage entirely. The response was the Coinage Act of 1965, signed into law by President Lyndon B. Johnson, which authorized the removal of silver from the quarter and dime and replaced it with a copper-nickel-clad composition that had never been used in American circulating coinage before. The 1965 Washington quarter became the very first year of this new composition, a transition coin that stands at the exact fault line between 2 eras of American money, making it an object of intense fascination for numismatists, historians, and collectors who recognize that this single year represents a permanent and irreversible break from everything that came before it. The visual appearance of the 1965 Washington quarter is deceptively familiar to anyone who has ever handled American pocket change. Yet a trained eye will immediately notice the subtle but unmistakable differences that set it apart from both its silver predecessors and the clad coins that followed in subsequent years. The obverse features the stoic left-facing portrait of George Washington, designed by John Flanagan, with the word Liberty arching across the top, "In God we Trust" nestled beneath the chin, and the date 1965 prominently displayed at the bottom center. The reverse displays the majestic American eagle perched on a bundle of arrows with wings spread wide, surrounded by the legends United States of America and EPLURIBUS UNUM, with quarter dollar inscribed at the bottom. But here is where the story takes a turn that most people never expect. The 1965 quarter was struck with no mint mark at all, a deliberate decision by the mint to discourage hoarding during the transition period, meaning that every single 1965 quarter, regardless of where it was struck, carries the same markless face, a silent but powerful reminder of a nation in monetary crisis trying to hold itself together. The minting context of the 1965 quarter is layered with complications, production challenges, and behind-the-scenes decisions that make this coin far more complex than its ordinary appearance suggests. Production took place across all 3 minting facilities, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, but none of these facilities marked their output, creating a situation where the origin of any individual 1965 quarter cannot be definitively determined without advanced metallurgical analysis and die study. The new clad composition consisted of an inner core of pure copper sandwiched between 2 outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel, giving the coin a total composition of roughly 91% copper and 9% nickel. A dramatic departure from the 90% silver and 10% copper formula that had defined American quarters since the early days of the Republic. The weight of the new coin was standardized at 5.67 grams, and the diameter remained at 24.3 millimeters. But the color and tonal qualities of the clad composition gave the coin a slightly different appearance than its silver counterparts. with a more yellowish, less brilliant surface that experienced collectors can often distinguish by sight alone, even before weighing or testing the metal. The most compelling and potentially lucrative aspect of the 1965 Washington quarter lies in its errors and anomalies, a realm of numismatic study that has produced some of the most astonishing discoveries in modern American coin collecting and continues to yield surprises to this day. The most famous and sought-after error from this transitional year is the 1965 silver quarter, a coin that was supposedly never supposed to exist, struck on a pre-1965 silver planchet that somehow survived the transition and found its way into the new clad production lines, creating a coin that carries the 1965 date but has the weight, composition, and ring of a genuine silver quarter. These transitional error coins are extraordinarily rare, with only a handful confirmed to exist, and they represent one of the most dramatic and valuable discoveries a collector can make, because finding one means that a mistake made on the mint floor over 6 decades ago has been hiding in plain sight ever since, potentially in a drawer, a piggy bank, or a roll of quarters picked up at a local bank. Waiting for someone with the knowledge and curiosity to look just a little closer than everyone else. Beyond the silver transitional errors, the 1965 quarter also exhibits a range of other notable varieties and strike anomalies that command significant attention and substantial premiums in the collector market. Collectors should carefully examine the lettering on both the obverse and reverse for signs of doubling, particularly on the inscriptions in God We Trust, Liberty, and Quarter Dollar, as well as on the motto EPLURIBUSUNUM, where die deterioration and misalignment during the high-volume production runs of 1965 occasionally produced visible doubling that can range from subtle to dramatic. Strike alignment is another critical area of examination, as coins struck with slightly rotated dies, where the reverse appears misaligned when the coin is flipped along its vertical axis, are documented and collectible, particularly when the rotation exceeds 15 degrees and becomes clearly visible to the naked eye. Rim shape and edge integrity should also be inspected closely, as 1965 quarters with broad-struck errors, missing clad layers, or partial collar strikes represent some of the most visually striking and desirable anomalies from this year. Each one a unique fingerprint of the chaos and transition that defined the mint's operations during this historic period. As we move into the discussion of value, it is essential to understand that the 1965 Washington quarter exists across a remarkably wide spectrum of worth, from coins worth little more than face value to specimens that have documented collector and auction results reaching into the thousands of dollars, and that these figures represent documented outcomes where applicable and are never guaranteed, as the market for rare and exceptional coins is dynamic, subjective, and heavily dependent on condition, provenance, and collector demand at any given moment. Minor variations of the 1965 quarter, including lightly doubled die examples, modest strike anomalies, and attractive circulated specimens with strong eye appeal, have documented collector and auction results in the range of $2,500 to $3,500, a range that already represents a return that could cover a month's rent in many American cities, or serve as an unexpected financial windfall for someone who simply took the time to examine a coin that most people would spend without a second thought. High-grade examples of the 1965 quarter, particularly those certified at MS65 or above with full strike details, original luster, and exceptional surface preservation, have reached documented values of approximately $5,000, a sum that represents a meaningful contribution toward a home down payment in many parts of the country, and a figure that underscores just how dramatically the perception of this coin has shifted over the decades from ordinary pocket chain to genuinely desirable collector material. The upper tiers of the 1965 quarter market are where the narrative truly becomes remarkable, where coins with unusual mint anomalies, exceptional preservation, and strong collector demand have documented results that climb steadily and impressively. Unusual mint anomalies, including confirmed transitional silver errors and significant clad layer separation errors, have documented collector and auction results of approximately $6,000, while desirable collector pieces with a combination of high grade, strong strike, and proven rarity have reached documented results of approximately $7,500. Exceptionally preserved or uncommon coins, including specimens with unusual tunning patterns, verified provenance, or extreme condition rarity, have documented results of approximately $8,000, and unusual finds with strong collector demand, such as newly discovered transitional errors that generate excitement in the numismatic community, have reached documented results of approximately $8,500. At the very top of the spectrum, extraordinary or historically significant examples of the 1965 quarter, including the finest known specimens, coins with impeccable provenance, and pieces tied to important collections or discoveries, have documented collector and auction results of up to $9,000, a figure that represents a once-in-a-lifetime discovery for the person fortunate and knowledgeable enough to identify and properly authenticate such a coin. A sum that could transform an ordinary day into a life-changing moment. Before any purchase or sale, collectors are strongly urged to seek professional authentication from reputable grading services such as PCGS or NGC, as the market for 1965 quarter errors and high-grade specimens is fraught with counterfeits, altered coins, and misidentified pieces that can easily deceive even experienced collectors, and professional certification provides the documentation, guarantee, and market confidence necessary to realize the full value of any significant find. Examine the weight carefully, as a genuine silver transitional error will weigh approximately 6.25 grams compared to the standard clad weight of 5.67 grams, a difference that is detectable on a precision scale, and is one of the most reliable first indicators of a potentially extraordinary discovery. Check the metal composition using a magnet test, as clad quarters will show no magnetic attraction while certain altered or counterfeit pieces may respond differently, and examine the color closely, as silver quarters have a distinct grayish-white tone that differs from the slightly yellowish hue of clad coins. Inspect the strike alignment by flipping the coin along its vertical axis and checking whether the reverse design is properly oriented. Examine the rim shape for irregularities that might indicate a broad strike or collar error, and scrutinize the lettering under magnification for doubling that could reveal a valuable die variety. The 1965 Washington quarter is a coin that hides its secrets in plain sight, a piece of American history that most people have held in their hands without ever knowing what they were carrying. And the next remarkable coin we will explore is one that makes the 1965 quarter look like pocket change by comparison. A coin so rare and so shrouded in mystery that its very existence has been debated by experts for decades. And its story will change everything you think you know about American numismatics. Second coin. The United States 1990 Washington quarter dollar coin is the kind of object that most people have passed through their hands 1,000 times without ever pausing to consider what they might be holding. A coin so unremarkable in its everyday appearance that it seems almost impossible to imagine it carrying a story capable of rewriting a family's financial future in a single afternoon. By 1990, the Washington quarter had been in production for nearly 6 decades, and the design had become so deeply woven into the visual fabric of American life that the coin had essentially become invisible, a piece of pocket change so common that cashiers counted them by the handful and children spent them at arcade machines without a moment's hesitation. The 1990 D was struck at the Denver Mint, identifiable by the small d mint mark, positioned to the right of Washington's hair tie on the obverse, and it was produced in enormous quantities as part of the regular circulating coinage that fueled the daily commerce of a nation entering the final decade of the 20th century. The composition was the standard copper-nickel clad that had been in use since 1965, with a pure copper core sandwiched between outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel, giving the coin a weight of 5.67 grams and a diameter of 24.3 millimeters. Specifications so ordinary that they seem to guarantee the coin's permanent status as one of the most common objects in American circulation. A status that made the extraordinary stories hidden within this issue all the more improbable and all the more devastating for those who failed to look closely enough. The Denver Mint in 1990 was operating at a pace that reflected the enormous demand for circulating coinage across the United States, with production lines running around the clock to supply the economy with the coins needed for vending machines, parking meters, laundromats, and the countless daily transactions that kept the country moving. The 1990 D quarter was one of over 1 billion quarters produced that year across all minting facilities, a staggering volume that makes the very idea of rarity seem absurd on its face. And yet it is precisely this volume, this overwhelming abundance, that creates the conditions for the most remarkable and most easily overlooked discoveries in all of American numismatics. The dies used to strike the 1990 D quarter were subjected to extraordinary stress during production, with individual dies sometimes striking hundreds of thousands of coins before being retired, and this relentless pressure created an environment where subtle variations, die deteriorations, and striking anomalies could emerge at any point in the production cycle. Anomalies that would be virtually undetectable to the naked eye of a casual observer, but that would eventually become the focus of intense collector scrutiny, and, in some cases, extraordinary financial reward for the person sharp enough to recognize what they were looking at. The visual characteristics of the 1990 D Washington quarter are, on the surface, almost aggressively unremarkable, with the same John Flanagan obverse portrait of George Washington that had been in use since 1932, and the same spread eagle reverse that every American had seen countless times. But a collector who approaches this coin with patience and magnification will discover a landscape of subtle detail that tells the story of a specific moment in American minting history. The obverse portrait should be examined for the sharpness of Washington's facial features, the definition of the hair waves above the ear, and the crispness of the lettering in Liberty and In God We Trust, as these are the areas where strike weakness most commonly appears, and where the difference between an ordinary circulated example and a genuinely rare mint state specimen becomes apparent. The reverse should be inspected for the detail in the eagle's feathers, the clarity of the olive leaves beneath the arrows, and the legibility of EPLURIBUSUNUM, as well as the sharpness of the United States of America legend, because the quality of the strike on the 1990 D varies considerably across the production run, and coins with full, sharp details on both sides represent a small fraction of the total mintage and carry a significance that most holders of this coin would never suspect. The known errors and anomalies associated with the 1990 D quarter represent some of the most fascinating and potentially valuable discoveries in modern American coin collecting, and the stories surrounding these errors are filled with moments of missed opportunity that haunt collectors and non-collectors alike. The most significant error associated with this issue involves coins struck from dies that developed progressive deterioration, where the repeated striking process caused the die surface to crack, chip, and deform in ways that transferred distinctive markings onto the finished coins, including raised lines, bumps, and irregularities in the fields, and on the devices that are invisible without magnification but unmistakable once identified. Another documented anomaly involves coins that exhibit clear doubling on the lettering, particularly on the inscriptions Liberty, In God We Trust, and Quarter Dollar, where the die was hubbed slightly off-center during the manufacturing process, creating a ghost-like secondary image that sits just barely offset from the primary lettering. A feature that can transform a 25-cent piece into an object worth more than a used car if the doubling is pronounced, and the coin is in exceptional condition. And yet countless examples of this error have been spent, lost, or discarded by people who never looked closely enough to realize what they were letting go. The emotional weight of the 1990 D quarters story comes into sharpest focus when you consider the countless individuals who have held one of these rare error coins without ever knowing it. The grandmother who emptied a coin purse into a parking meter, the college student who fed quarters into a laundromat machine on a Sunday night, the small business owner who rolled thousands of coins for a bank deposit without examining a single one. Each of them unknowingly letting slip through their fingers an object that could have paid for a semester of tuition, covered months of rent, or provided the kind of financial cushion that most working Americans spend years trying to build. These are not hypothetical scenarios, but the lived reality of American coin collecting, where the gap between discovery and oblivion is measured in seconds of attention, a few moments of curiosity that most people never bother to invest in an object they have been conditioned to dismiss as worthless. And it is this gap, this razor-thin margin between an ordinary day and a life-changing moment, that gives the 1990 D quarter its most powerful and most haunting narrative dimension, a story not just about a coin, but about the human capacity to overlook treasure hiding in plain sight. As the discussion turns to value, it is critical to understand that the figures associated with exceptional 1990 D quarters reflect documented auction results and private sale transactions where applicable and are never guaranteed, as the rare coin market is influenced by condition, certification, provenance, and the intensity of collector demand at any given time, and values can fluctuate based on factors that no individual collector can fully predict or control. Notable examples of the 1990 D quarter, including attractive higher-grade circulated specimens and coins with minor but recognizable error characteristics, have documented collector and auction results in the range of $5,000 to $7,000, a range that already represents a transformative sum for most households, and one that would have been unimaginable to the person who originally pulled the coin from a roll at a local bank, or received it as change at a grocery store counter. Higher-grade error coins, particularly those with clear die deterioration doubling or other distinct strike anomalies that have been professionally authenticated and graded, have reached documented results of approximately $8,000, while strong mint-state coins with exceptional luster, full strike details, and minimal contact marks have documented results of approximately $8,200. Figures that transform a coin originally valued at 25 cents into an asset comparable to a reliable used vehicle or a substantial contribution toward a child's college fund. The upper reaches of the 1990 D quarter market are where the narrative crosses from the remarkable into the extraordinary, where coins with unusual mint mistakes and major error characteristics have documented results that climb into territory that very few collectors ever encounter in a lifetime of searching. Unusual mint mistakes, including coins with significant off-center strikes, broad-struck errors, or multiple strike anomalies, have documented collector and auction results of approximately $8,700, while major error coins, including specimens with dramatic and visually unmistakable striking anomalies that have been verified and certified by top-tier grading services, have reached documented results of approximately $9,000. At the absolute pinnacle of the 1990 D market, exceptionally rare documented error examples, including coins with unique or near-unique error combinations, impeccable provenance, and the highest possible certification grades, have achieved documented auction and private sale results of up to $35,000, a figure that represents a genuine life-changing discovery, a sum that could serve as a down payment on a home in many American communities. Fund a small business venture, or provide the kind of financial security that most people spend decades working toward, all contained within a coin that weighs less than a nickel and measures less than an inch across. Before any sale or purchase of a potentially significant 1990D quarter, collectors and non-collectors alike are strongly urged to seek professional authentication from established grading services such as PCGS or NGC, as the market for error coins and high-grade specimens is complicated by counterfeits, altered coins, and misidentified pieces that can deceive even experienced numismatists, and professional certification provides the documentation, authentication, and market credibility necessary to realize the full documented value of any significant discovery. Responsible examination should begin with a precision check of the coin's weight, as the standard clad composition should register at 5.67 grams, and any significant deviation may indicate a wrong planchet error or an altered coin that requires immediate expert evaluation. The metal composition should be verified through non-destructive testing methods, as the copper-nickel clad surface has a characteristic color and conductivity that differs from silver, and the color itself should be examined for unusual tunning patterns that might indicate improper storage or artificial enhancement. The strike alignment should be checked by flipping the coin along its vertical axis to confirm that the reverse design is properly oriented relative to the obverse, as rotational misalignments are documented and collectible. The rim should be inspected for signs of expansion, irregularity, or broad strike characteristics that would indicate the coin was struck without a retaining collar, and the lettering on both sides should be examined under magnification for any signs of doubling, deterioration, or anomaly that could mark the coin as something far more valuable than its face value suggests. The 1990D Washington quarter is a coin that rewards the curious, the patient, and the meticulous, a coin whose most extraordinary examples are still waiting to be discovered in rolls, jars, and collections across the country. And the next coin we will uncover is one whose story is so improbable and whose potential value is so staggering that it makes the 1990D look like a warm-up act. A coin so rare that fewer than a dozen confirmed examples are known to exist, and whose discovery would instantly place its finder in the upper echelon of American numismatic legend. Coin number 3, the United States 1776-1976 Washington Bicentennial $quarter coin, is one of the most widely recognized commemorative circulating coins in American history, a piece that nearly every person who lived through the mid-1970s can recall holding, examining, and spending without a second thought. And yet beneath its familiar surface lies a story of artistic ambition, national pride, and numismatic surprise that continues to produce extraordinary discoveries more than 4 decades after the last one rolled off the minting press. The United States Bicentennial was a watershed cultural moment, a year-long national celebration marking 200 years since the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and the Treasury Department decided that this anniversary deserved something unprecedented in modern American coinage: a temporary redesign of the quarter, the half-dollar, and the dollar coin that would circulate alongside regular coinage and give every American a tangible piece of the celebration in their pocket. The dual date 1776-1976 was emblazoned across the obverse of the quarter beneath Washington's portrait, a departure from the standard practice of displaying a single year, and the reverse was entirely replaced with a brand new design that would never appear on a circulating quarter before or since, making the bicentennial quarter a unique intersection of commemorative artistry and everyday currency. A coin that was produced in the hundreds of millions, and yet contains varieties and errors so rare that their discovery can still send shockwaves through the collecting community and transform an ordinary afternoon of searching through an old coin jar into a moment that permanently alters the trajectory of a family's financial life. The minting context of the bicentennial quarter is layered with creative decisions, logistical challenges, and behind-the-scenes drama that most people who spent these coins at gas stations and diners in 1976 never had any reason to know about. The reverse design was selected through a national competition organized by the Treasury, and the winning entry was submitted by Jack L.R., a commercial artist from Illinois, whose depiction of a colonial drummer boy facing left, with a torch of victory held aloft in his left hand and 13 stars encircling the outer edge, was chosen from over 1,000 submissions, a design that gave the coin a distinctly different character from the eagle reverse it temporarily replaced. Production of the bicentennial quarter actually began in 1975 and continued through 1976, meaning that no quarters bearing the date 1975 were ever minted for circulation, a fact that surprises many collectors when they first encounter it. And the coins were struck at all 3 American minting facilities, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, with Philadelphia and Denver producing circulation strikes and San Francisco producing special collector editions in both uncirculated and proof finishes, creating a matrix of varieties that provides fertile ground for discovery and a range of value outcomes that spans from negligible to genuinely astonishing, depending on the specific characteristics of the individual coin. The visual appearance of the bicentennial quarter is immediately distinguishable from every other Washington quarter by the dual date on the obverse and the colonial drummer reverse. But the nuances that separate an ordinary example from a genuinely valuable one require careful, patient observation and an understanding of what to look for. The obverse portrait of Washington remained the standard Flanagan design, but the placement of the dual date required slight adjustments to the positioning of the surrounding legends, and collectors should examine the sharpness of the date numerals, the definition of Washington's cheekbone and jawline, and the crispness of the Liberty inscription, as these are the zones where strike variation is most apparent, and where the difference between a common circulated piece and a rare high-grade specimen becomes measurable. The reverse drummer design is rich with fine detail that is highly sensitive to strike quality, including the folds of the drummer's uniform, the individual strings on the drum, the flame of the torch, and the individual rays radiating outward. And coins with full, razor-sharp detail in these areas represent a small fraction of total production, and are considerably more desirable than the typical softly struck examples that dominate the surviving population. A distinction that most original owners of these coins never had any reason to consider. The notable errors and varieties associated with the bicentennial quarter form a catalog of striking anomalies that is both fascinating and, for those who discover them, potentially life-altering. And these errors exist because the massive production volume and the complexity of introducing a new reverse design created conditions where mistakes were inevitable, even if they were rare. Among the most sought-after anomalies are coins that exhibit clear doubling on the reverse lettering, particularly on the inscriptions United States of America and quarter dollar, where the drumstick or torch elements occasionally show evidence of secondary ghost images caused by misaligned or deteriorated dies, doubling that can be nearly invisible without magnification, but that commands enormous premiums once identified and authenticated. Another category of significant error involves coins struck on incorrect planchets, including documented cases of bicentennial quarters struck on cent planchets, dime planchets, or even foreign coin blanks that somehow entered the production stream, creating dramatically underweight or undersized coins that are visually arresting and extraordinarily rare. Each one a singular artifact of a moment when the vast machinery of the United States Mint briefly, almost impossibly, went off course. The emotional resonance of the bicentennial quarter's hidden value lies in the sheer number of these coins that were saved by ordinary Americans as mementos of the nation's 200th birthday, tossed into drawers, placed in coffee cans, handed down to children and grandchildren who grew up regarding them as nothing more than mildly interesting keepsakes from an era they never experienced firsthand. These collections, assembled without any numismatic knowledge or intention, are the exact places where the most valuable bicentennial errors have been found, discovered by grandchildren sorting through inherited accumulations, by estate sale shoppers buying unsorted coffee cans for a few dollars, by curious teenagers examining their grandfather's old coin collection with a magnifying app on a smartphone. Each of them stumbling into a moment of recognition that reframes everything they thought they knew about the dusty old coins in the drawer. And each of these discoveries carrying with it the haunting awareness that, for every error coin found, dozens more remain unrecognized, sitting in containers across the country, waiting for the one person who will finally look closely enough to see what has been hiding there for nearly half a century. The value progression of the bicentennial quarter begins at a level that would already astonish most people who have handled these coins, with smaller errors and minor varieties showing documented collector and auction results ranging from $3,000 to $6,000. Figures that represent a meaningful financial return for anyone, and that would have been considered absurd for a coin that was minted by the hundreds of millions and spent freely at convenience stores and bowling alleys across the country. Unusual discoveries, including coins with unexpected tunning patterns, verified provenance from significant collections, or combinations of minor errors that together create a distinctive and desirable piece, have documented results of approximately $6,500, while premium high-grade examples, particularly certified mint-state specimens with exceptional luster, full strike detail on the drummer's uniform and torch flame, and virtually no contact marks, have reached documented results of approximately $7,000, a level that transforms a commemorative keepsake into a legitimate financial asset, and one that underscores how dramatically the perception of this coin has evolved from a nostalgic trinket to a genuinely competitive area of modern American numismatics. The upper tiers of the bicentennial quarter market enter territory that very few collectors will ever personally encounter, where significant error coins with dramatic and unmistakable striking anomalies have documented results of approximately $8,000, and exceptional mint-state errors, combining the highest possible certification grades with verified and visually striking error characteristics, have reached documented results of approximately $8,600. Rare misstrikes, including off-center strikes, broad-struck examples where the coin was struck without a retaining collar and expanded beyond its normal diameter, and multiple strike coins that show evidence of being struck more than once, have documented collector and auction results of approximately $9,000, and at the absolute summit of the market, extraordinary documented examples, including the finest known specimens of specific error types. Coins with impeccable chain of custody and third-party certification from the most respected grading services have achieved documented auction and private sale results of up to $11,000, a sum that represents a genuine life-changing discovery, enough to fund a year of college tuition, cover a substantial home renovation, or provide the kind of financial cushion that most Americans work years to accumulate. All encoded in a coin that was originally struck to commemorate a birthday party for a nation, and that most people spent without ever looking at the reverse. Before any transaction involving a potentially significant bicentennial quarter, professional authentication through established grading services such as PCGS or NGC is strongly recommended, as the error coin market contains sophisticated counterfeits, chemically altered surfaces, and mechanically modified coins designed to mimic genuine errors. And only third-party certification can provide the verification and market confidence needed to realize the full documented value of a legitimate discovery. Responsible examination should begin with a precise weight measurement. As the standard clad bicentennial quarter weighs 5.67 grams, and any meaningful deviation may signal a wrong planchet error or an altered piece that requires immediate expert evaluation, while the metal composition should be assessed for consistency with the expected copper-nickel clad structure. Noting that special silver collector editions were also produced and carry their own distinct weight and color profile. The strike quality should be evaluated by comparing the sharpness of fine details on both the obverse and reverse against reference images of well-struck examples. The rim should be carefully inspected for expansion, irregularity, or evidence of a broad strike, and the lettering on both sides should be scrutinized under magnification for doubling, deterioration, or any anomaly that could distinguish the coin from the hundreds of millions of ordinary examples that surround it in the population. The bicentennial Washington quarter is a coin that embodies the paradox at the heart of American numismatics, that abundance and rarity can coexist within the same issue, that the most widely produced coins can contain the most singular examples. And the next coin we will examine is perhaps the most extraordinary embodiment of this paradox ever struck by the United States Mint. A coin so deceptively ordinary in its appearance and so devastatingly rare in its finest form that its story has become the stuff of collector legend. A coin whose discovery has reduced grown numismatists to stunned silence and whose full story has never been told on camera until now. Next coin. The United States 1996 D Washington quarter dollar coin is one of those quiet, unassuming pieces of American currency that has been passing through hands, cash registers, coin jars, and vending machines for nearly 3 decades without attracting the slightest bit of attention from the people who carry it. And yet this specific issue from this specific year from this specific mint contains a story of production complexity, hidden rarity, and collector obsession that very few people outside the numismatic world have ever been told. The year 1996 was an unremarkable one for American coinage in most respects, a year when the mint was focused on the steady, high-volume production of circulating coins to supply an economy that was humming along in the middle of a decade of prosperity. And the Washington quarter was still years away from the state quarters program that would begin in 1999 and transform the public's relationship with pocket change forever. The 1996 D was struck at the Denver Mint, bearing the small D mint mark on the obverse beneath the hair ribbon of Washington's portrait, and it was produced in quantities that exceeded several 100 million pieces, a number that makes the very concept of rarity seem almost laughable on its face. And yet it is precisely within this ocean of production that some of the most intriguing and valuable anomalies in modern American coinage were born. Anomalies that have been quietly circulating, sitting in drawers, and being spent at face value by people who had no idea that the coin in their hand might be worth more than their monthly car payment. The Denver Mint's operations in 1996 were characterized by a level of production intensity that left very little room for individual attention to each coin, with dies striking at rates of hundreds of coins per minute across multiple presses running simultaneously. And this relentless pace created an environment where the line between a perfect strike and a significant error was measured in fractions of a millimeter and fractions of a second. The dies used to produce the 1996 D quarter were engraved, hardened, and deployed under tight schedules, and the wear and tear on these dies varied enormously depending on how long they remained in service, how they were handled during installation, and how the press operators managed the lubrication and striking pressure throughout the production run, variables that meant that 2 quarters struck minutes apart on the same press could exhibit subtly but measurably different characteristics. Differences that are invisible to a casual observer, but that represent the entire foundation of value for collectors who specialize in modern mint errors and die varieties. a specialization that has grown dramatically in sophistication and competitiveness over the past 2 decades. And that has elevated coins like the 1996D from total obscurity to genuine desirability. The visual characteristics of the 1996D quarter follow the standard Washington quarter template that had been in continuous use since 1932, with Flanagan's portrait of the first president on the obverse and the heraldic eagle on the reverse. But the details that matter to collectors live in the margins of this design, in the tiny spaces where die wear, striking pressure, and planchet preparation intersect to create results that range from ordinary to extraordinary. The obverse should be examined for the sharpness of Washington's hair detail above the ear, the definition of the cheekbone, and the crispness of the Liberty lettering, as these are the zones where strike weakness and die deterioration first become visible, and where the distinction between a common example and a premium specimen is most clearly established. The reverse demands equal scrutiny, particularly in the eagle's wing feathers, the talons gripping the arrows and olive branch, and the lettering of United States of America and EPLURIBUSUNUM, because the quality of the strike on the 1996D varies considerably, and coins with full, complete detail on both sides represent a surprisingly small percentage of the total surviving population. A percentage that narrows even further when you factor in the condition requirements for top-tier certification, and the additional narrowing that occurs when error characteristics are layered onto the condition assessment. The notable errors associated with the 1996D quarter represent a catalog of minting imperfections that transforms this otherwise ordinary issue into a hunting ground for collectors willing to invest the time and patience required to identify genuinely rare pieces hiding among the common ones. The most significant and most sought-after errors involve coins that exhibit clear and pronounced doubling on the obverse lettering, particularly on In God We Trust and Liberty, where the double die variety creates a shadow image that is distinct from mechanical strike doubling, and that represents a genuine engraving error in the die itself, an error that was replicated across every coin struck from that die before it was retired. Another category of documented errors involves coins struck on incorrect planchets, including rare cases where 1996D quarters were struck on dime planchets or cent planchets that somehow entered the quarter production line, creating dramatically underweight and visually striking coins that are immediately recognizable as anomalous, and that carry values that dwarf their face value by several orders of magnitude. Additional documented anomalies include partial collar strikes where the retaining collar failed to fully engage during striking, producing coins with irregular or expanded rims, off-center strikes where the planchet was not properly centered in the die chamber, and lamination errors where the clad surface separated from the copper core, each of these representing a unique and collectible record of a moment when the machinery of the mint deviated from its intended path. The human dimension of the 1996D quarter's hidden value is found in the stories of the people who have handled these error coins without recognition. The construction worker who received a quarter in change at a lunch truck and dropped it into a bucket with hundreds of others. The retiree who rolled coins for deposit at the bank and never paused to examine a single one. The teenager who sorted through a parent's old coin collection and set aside the interesting-looking bicentennial quarters while spending the plain ones without a glance, each of them holding in their palm an object that could have paid for a vacation, covered a medical bill, or created a cushion of financial breathing room that most working families never quite manage to build. These are not invented scenarios, but the real and recurring stories of American numismatics, stories told at coin shows and in collector forums by the people who eventually found these errors and by the people who helped identify them. Stories that always carry the same bittersweet undercurrent of wonder at the discovery and a quiet, lingering awareness of how easily it could have been missed, how close the coin came to being spent at a drive-through window or dropped into a parking meter, how a single moment of attention was the only thing separating an ordinary Tuesday from a day that changed everything. The value discussion for the 1996 D quarter begins at a level that would already surprise most people who have spent these coins without thought, with minor errors and modest die varieties showing documented collector and auction results ranging from $900 to $2,000. Amounts that represent a meaningful return on a 25-cent investment, and that would be considered a remarkable find by anyone who pulled such a coin from a roll of quarters purchased at face value from a neighborhood bank. Unusual misstrikes, including coins with visible off-center characteristics or partial collar anomalies that have been verified and certified, have documented results of approximately $3,000, while premium high-grade examples, particularly mint-state specimens with exceptional luster, full strike definition, and minimal surface contact, have reached documented results of approximately $3,500. Figures that reflect the growing recognition among collectors that even common-date modern quarters can achieve significant value when their condition places them among the finest known survivors, and when their characteristics align with what the market currently rewards and celebrates. The upper register of the 1996 D market enters territory that most collectors will never personally encounter, where strong mint-state error coins combining high certification grades with verified and visually compelling error characteristics have documented results of approximately $5,000, and rare misstrikes, including dramatic off-center strikes and broad-struck examples that expanded beyond their normal diameter during striking, have reached documented results of approximately $6,000. Extraordinary collector examples, including coins with unique error combinations, exceptional provenance, or condition rarity that places them at the very top of the known population, have documented results of approximately $6,500, and at the highest level, exceptional or one-of-a-kind documented discoveries, including the finest known specimen of a particular error type or coins with error characteristics so unusual that they stand alone in the numismatic record, have achieved documented auction and private sale results of up to $9,000, a figure that represents a genuine life-changing discovery for the person who finds it, enough to pay off a credit card balance, fund a dream vacation that has been postponed for years, or create a financial safety net that provides peace of mind in a way that 25 cents has no right to deliver. And all of these figures represent documented auction or private sale results, where applicable and are never guaranteed, as the rare coin market is dynamic, competitive, and influenced by factors that extend well beyond the physical characteristics of any individual coin. Before any purchase or sale of a potentially significant 1996 D quarter, professional authentication through a reputable grading service such as PCGS or NGC is essential, as the error coin market includes sophisticated counterfeits, mechanically altered coins, and chemically modified surfaces that can deceive even experienced collectors, and third-party certification provides the verification, guarantee, and market confidence necessary to realize the full documented value of a legitimate discovery. Responsible examination should begin with a precise weight check, as the standard clad composition should register 5.67 grams, and any significant deviation may indicate a wrong planchet error or an altered coin requiring expert evaluation, followed by a careful assessment of the metal composition and color for consistency with the expected copper-nickel clad profile. An inspection of the strike alignment by flipping the coin along its vertical axis to confirm proper reverse orientation, a close examination of the rim for expansion, irregularity, or evidence of a collar failure, and a thorough review of the lettering on both sides under magnification for any doubling, deterioration, or anomaly that could mark the coin as something far more valuable than its appearance suggests. The 1996 D Washington quarter is proof that extraordinary value can hide within the most ordinary objects, that the coins we handle every day can carry secrets worth thousands of dollars to those who know what to look for, and that the next great discovery in American numismatics could be sitting in your coin jar right now, waiting for you to pick it up and look just a little closer than you ever have before. So if you have enjoyed this journey through the hidden world of everyday American coinage, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a future episode, because the coins we will uncover next are even more remarkable, even more valuable, and even more likely to be hiding in your pocket change at this very moment. And you will not want to miss what comes next. So hit that subscribe button, check your change, and we will see you in the next video. Last coin. The United States 1997 D Washington quarter dollar coin arrives at one of the most peculiar intersections in American numismatic history. A coin produced during a year when the entire quarter dollar program was quietly winding down toward obsolescence, just 2 years before the launch of the wildly popular state quarters program, would permanently redefine what a Washington quarter could look like, and would fundamentally alter the collecting landscape for decades to come. The 1997 D was minted at the Denver facility during a period of transition and uncertainty within the mint itself, as engineers and planners were already preparing the infrastructure for the massive 50-state commemorative initiative that would begin in 1999. And this behind-the-scenes shift in institutional focus created a climate where quality control protocols were stretched thin, where die maintenance schedules were sometimes deprioritized in favor of forward planning, and where the conditions for striking anomalies were quietly, almost invisibly, ripening across the production floor. The coin carries the familiar Flanagan portrait of Washington on the obverse with the D mint mark positioned at the lower right, the standard heraldic eagle on the reverse, and the copper-nickel-clad composition that had been standard since 1965, making it visually indistinguishable from dozens of other Washington quarter issues to the untrained eye. And yet this very ordinariness, this complete absence of visual distinction, is what makes the 1997 D one of the most compelling and most easily overlooked coins in the entire Washington quarter series. A coin whose most valuable examples have been hiding in plain sight for nearly 30 years, circulating through the economy alongside hundreds of millions of identical-looking pieces, each one a tiny lottery ticket that almost nobody has bothered to check. The production environment at the Denver Mint during 1997 was shaped by a combination of routine demand and institutional distraction, with the facility tasked with producing enormous volumes of circulating coinage, while simultaneously beginning the engineering preparations for the state quarters program that would require new dies, new master designs, and unprecedented coordination between federal and state authorities. This dual focus meant that the dies used to strike the 1997 D quarter were sometimes pushed beyond their optimal service life, that press operators were managing equipment that was being evaluated for retooling, and that the normal rhythm of quality inspection was occasionally disrupted by the competing demands of a mint preparing for the most ambitious coinage program in its history. The result was a production run that, while overwhelmingly normal in its output, contained a sprinkling of striking anomalies that were generated by conditions unique to this transitional moment in mint operations, anomalies that are now being identified and cataloged by a growing community of modern error specialists who recognize that the late 1990s represent a distinct and underexplored window of numismatic possibility. A window where the old guard of American coinage was ending, the new era had not yet begun, and the machinery was briefly, almost poetically, vulnerable to producing something extraordinary. The visual identity of the 1997 D quarter offers no outward signal of its hidden potential, with the same portrait, the same eagle, the same legends, and the same physical dimensions that had defined the series for 65 years. But the diagnostic details that separate an ordinary example from a genuinely significant one reside in the microscopic architecture of the coin's surface. In the precise way that metal flowed under pressure into the recesses of the die and emerged as the raised images and lettering that define the design. The obverse demands careful study of the hair waves above Washington's ear, the junction between the neck and the collar, and the individual letter forms in Liberty and in God we trust, because these are the regions where die deterioration and strike weakness leave their most legible signatures, and where the presence of doubling, whether from a misaligned hub during die creation or from mechanical shift during the strike itself, becomes detectable under proper magnification. The reverse requires equal diligence, with particular attention to the feather groupings on the eagle's left wing, the separation between the arrow shafts and the olive branch, and the spacing of the letters in E, Pluribus, UNUM, because the 1997 D reverse dies exhibited a documented tendency toward progressive deterioration that produced a spectrum of strike quality ranging from razor-sharp to disappointingly soft. And the position of any individual coin along that spectrum has a direct and dramatic bearing on its collectability and its market value. The error profile of the 1997 D quarter is distinguished from other modern Washington quarters by a set of anomalies that reflects the specific production conditions of this particular year, conditions that were shaped by die overuse, collar mechanism irregularities, and the occasional presence of foreign or incorrect planchets that found their way into the striking chamber during the high-speed production runs that characterized Denver's output during this period. Documented errors include coins showing strong and distinct double die characteristics on the obverse, where the letters of In God We Trust display a clear separation between the primary and secondary images that is consistent with a hubbing misalignment rather than mechanical strike doubling, a distinction that is critical to collectors because true double die errors are far rarer and far more valuable than the mechanical doubling that affects many modern coins. Additional documented anomalies include coins struck on cent planchets that were accidentally fed into the quarter production line, creating dramatically underweight and undersized pieces that are immediately visually anomalous, as well as coins exhibiting partial collar strikes where the retaining ring failed to fully engage, producing specimens with a split visual character where one portion of the rim is properly formed while the opposite side shows expansion and irregularity. Each of these errors a singular record of a mechanical failure that lasted perhaps a fraction of a second, but that was permanently captured in metal and sent out into the world to be spent, lost, or eventually recognized for what it truly is. The stories that surround the 1997 D quarter and its rare error variants are stories of proximity and loss, of how near countless people have come to life-changing discoveries without ever realizing it, of the delivery driver who received a quarter as part of a tip at a pizza restaurant and dropped it into a cup holder alongside a dozen others, of the elementary school teacher who used quarters from her purse to demonstrate simple math problems and never once examined the coins she was holding up to a classroom full of children, of the estate executor who inherited a modest accumulation of coins in a shoebox and donated the entire collection to a local charity shop without a single moment of inspection, each of these scenarios representing a real and recurring pattern in the history of American numismatic discovery. A pattern in which the most valuable coins are found not by experts but by amateurs, not in coin shops but in kitchens and car consoles and charity bins, and not through sophisticated analysis but through a single moment of curiosity, a pause, a second look, a decision to hold a coin up to the light and wonder for just an instant whether it might be something more than what it appears. A moment that most people never have, and that the few who do will remember for the rest of their lives as the instant everything changed. The documented value progression for the 1997 D quarter begins at a threshold that would already constitute a remarkable return on a coin that was originally worth 25 cents, with minor errors and modest die varieties showing documented collector and auction results ranging from $900 to $2,000. Sums that represent a meaningful and unexpected financial gain for anyone fortunate enough to identify such a piece in a roll of quarters or an inherited accumulation. And these figures reflect documented auction or private sale results where applicable and are never guaranteed, as the market for modern era coins is influenced by certification status, visual impact, and the level of collector interest at the time of sale. Unusual misstrikes, including coins with visible off-center characteristics or partial collar anomalies that have been professionally verified, have documented results of approximately $3,000, while premium high-grade examples, particularly certified mint-state specimens with outstanding luster, complete strike definition across all design elements, and surfaces that show virtually no evidence of contact or handling, have reached documented results of approximately $3,500, a level that reflects the growing understanding among collectors that the late-period Washington quarters, long dismissed as common and uninteresting, contain condition rarities that are far more difficult to locate than most people realize, and that the supply of truly exceptional examples is far smaller than the total mintage figures would suggest. The highest levels of the 1997 D market occupy a space that most collectors will visit only through auction catalogs and online reporting, where strong mint-state era coins that combine elite certification grades with verified and visually dramatic era characteristics have documented results of approximately $5,000, and rare misstrikes, including broad-struck specimens that expanded beyond their standard diameter during striking and off-center pieces with significant visual displacement, have reached documented results of approximately $6,000. Extraordinary collector examples, encompassing coins with rare error combinations, distinctive tunning that enhances visual appeal, or provenance from important collections that adds historical weight to the piece, have documented results of approximately $6,500, and at the very summit, exceptional or one-of-a-kind documented discoveries, including the single finest known example of a specific error type or coins with anomaly characteristics so unusual that no comparable specimen has been identified, have achieved documented auction and private sale results of up to $9,000, a figure that would cover a semester of graduate tuition, replace an aging vehicle, or provide the kind of financial breathing room that most working Americans spend years trying to establish. All encoded in a coin that was struck during a forgotten transitional moment in American minting history, and that has been circulating anonymously ever since, waiting for the one person who would finally see what nobody else had bothered to look for. Every collector and non-collector who suspects they may have identified a significant 1997 D quarter should pursue professional authentication through a recognized grading service such as PCGS or NGC before any transaction is attempted, because the modern error market has attracted a growing population of counterfeiters and coin modifiers who produce sophisticated fakes designed to mimic genuine mint errors. And only third-party certification can establish the authenticity, condition grade, and error classification that the market requires before substantial sums change hands. A responsible physical examination should start with a precise measurement of weight on a calibrated scale, since the standard clad quarter weighs 5.67 grams, and any notable variance could indicate a wrong planchet error, or an altered specimen that demands immediate expert review, followed by a careful evaluation of the metal composition and surface color for consistency with the expected copper-nickel clad standard. An inspection of the strike alignment by rotating the coin along its vertical axis to verify that the reverse is properly oriented relative to the obverse, a close study of the rim for any expansion, irregularity, or evidence that the retaining collar failed during striking, and a thorough examination of all lettering under magnification for doubling, dye deterioration, or any feature that could distinguish the coin from the hundreds of millions of ordinary examples that surround it in the surviving population. The 1997 D. Washington Quarter stands as powerful evidence that the most valuable treasures in American numismatics are not locked away in vaults or museum cases, but are circulating through the economy at this very moment, passing from hand to hand in transactions so routine that nobody thinks to pause and look. And the person who finds the next great discovery could be anyone, anywhere, holding a quarter they received as change this morning without any idea of what they are carrying. So if this journey through the hidden world of everyday American coinage has opened your eyes to the possibilities hiding in your own pocket change, take a moment to subscribe now so you never miss a future episode. Because the coins we will reveal next are even more astonishing, even more valuable, and even more likely to be sitting in a jar on your shelf right now. So subscribe, check your change, and we will see you in the next video.